TNA definitely fumbled the bag with their AMC debut. I mean, seriously, everything about this show was dreadful. You would think that TNA would be able to make a good first impression on a new network, but instead it was your average episode of Impact. This show was so bad that the production was 10 times worse. Imagine showing a section with quote-unquote celebrities, and in the background shows a bunch of empty seats. Look, AEW has always struggled to sell tickets for weekly television, but at least they made it look good. TNA, on the other hand, was like, screw it, let's show the entire empty arena, who cares? I'm telling you, man, this company never learns. And they never learned for the past 20 plus years. LOL TNA is not just a catchphrase. LOL TNA is a lifestyle to this company.
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Get stealing, woo, wheeling, dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun. Yeah! Kurt Angle, yeah! Why, Triple H, you son of a tell me why! And Tony Khan, this is also on you!
I am going to ruin wrestling.
Just get over it!
Well, it's good to be back. It's good to be back, of course, in the new year. The WrestleHavoc podcast is back after a long hiatus off the air, but we are back for the new year of 2026. And we got a lot of things to talk about on this edition of the show, man. You know, a lot of people on social media have been calling the new year of 2026 the new 2016. And I myself, I'm going to be honest, 2016 was a freaking awesome year, at least for me. And I know a lot of people, it was a freaking awesome year. I'm going to be honest. I love the year of 2016. 2016 was epic, in my opinion. I can vividly remember I was in 8th grade. My friends and I were watching the second trailer of Captain America Civil War. And when we saw Spider-Man at the end of that trailer, and this was during history class, we all went absolutely crazy. We all went absolutely crazy, but I genuinely believed 2026 is the new 2016. And no, I'm not saying that because 6 is in the end of 2026. I'm saying that because we got a lot of crazy stuff happening this year. I mean, for God's sakes, look at the movie lineup that we're getting this year. We're getting a lot of crazy movies this year. We got Spider-Man Brand New Day. We got Avengers Doomsday. I mean, come on, man. I am super excited for Avengers Doomsday. And on the wrestling front, man, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited with the wrestling front, even though wrestling has kind of been on the low recently. I mean, I haven't really been interested in any of the products in the later half of 2025. But honestly, I mean, wrestling has a lot going for itself, hopefully in 2026. And I'm definitely interested to see what happens in 2026 in terms of professional wrestling. But let's be honest with ourselves, 2026 didn't start off well on the TNA front. It didn't really start off well on the TNA front with this first show on AMC. What's up, everybody? It is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, on a new edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast. It is Monday, January 19th, 2025. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this episode of the podcast. We are going to be talking about a lot of things going on in the realm of professional wrestling, man. A lot of things happened while I was gone in the realm of professional wrestling. Of course, the big thing that happened was my GOAT. Yes, my GOAT, GOAT, John Cena, retired from professional wrestling last month at Saturday Night's Main Event, which sparked a lot of conversation about whether or not making John Cena tap out was the right decision or the wrong decision. Me personally, I did not mind whether or not John Cena won or lost. But one thing I will say, and what we can all agree with, I mean, the entire crowd in Washington, D.C. booed the hell out of Triple H. You know what I'm saying? Once Triple H came out, everybody was vastly upset. But if you look at what Gunther is doing now, I mean, for God's sakes, this guy is a heat magnet. I mean, this guy, everywhere he goes, he is generating heat unlike any other heel in the business today, and that includes MJF. And MJF, I still think, is one of the best heels in the business today. But Gunther right now is just on another level. Everywhere he goes, this guy, the heat that he generates is insane. That is a masterclass heel right there. MJF has always been a masterclass heel, and he will continue to be a masterclass heel. But I mean, for God's sakes, look at Gunther. Gunther right now is the man in terms of heels in the business today. But this is the WrestleHavoc podcast. Of course, as usual, the WrestleHavoc podcast is not only on the WrestleHavoc podcast channel, it's also on the World News Network YouTube channel as well, and also on the WNN Facebook page. So make sure to watch the podcast wherever you might find the podcast on any of those platforms. And without any further ado, let's get straight into talking about professional wrestling. And we're going to be talking about our main topic at the top of this show, and that is, of course, TNA. TNA. Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. I have a TNA poster on my background right here. This poster right here is a poster of TNA Destination X 2006. The date is right there if you can see it. Sunday, March 12th, 2006. And I believe the main event of that show was Christian Cage defending the NWA World title against Monty Brown. And I say the NWA title because at the time in TNA's early years, they used the NWA title. But that show also had the debut of Scott Steiner. And this was kind of months into when TNA started off on Spike. And for lack of a better term, TNA had a lot going for itself in 2006. I mean, they had a lot going for themselves in 2006. A lot of people say 2006 to 2008 was kind of the peak years of TNA. And some people add 2009, but in my opinion, 2009 was really where the cracks started to show. And that was the year before Hogan and Bischoff came in. I also have a poster in my studio of TNA Turning Point 2005, which was a couple of pay-per-views before Destination X 2006. Now, why do I have posters of those particular shows? Well, I have really no real reason as to why I have posters of those actual shows. Long story short, I wanted to get a poster for, let's say, Lockdown 2008, because I love that poster. Of course, that show had Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe in the Six Sides of Steel, and a lot of people considered that match to be one of the best TNA main events of all time. It was kind of an MMA style match, but it fit for the times because at the time MMA was just going through a boom period during that period of time. But I wanted to get some sort of TNA posters on there, but I got Turning Point 2005 simply because of Abyss versus Sabu, which had the Barbed Wire Massacre match. Rest in peace, Sabu. Arguably one of the greatest TNA matches of all time. And I got Destination X 2006 because it has AJ Styles. You can't see him right here. Christopher Daniels. And you can't really see the majority of him, but Samoa Joe. The three, in my opinion, one of the three names that reminisce a lot of that makes you think about TNA. Whenever you talk about those three names, you think about TNA. And of course, they had arguably the greatest match in TNA history, that being AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels versus Samoa Joe in the three-way match for the X Division title at Unbreakable 2005. Arguably the greatest match in TNA history. But TNA, man, again, and I've constantly talked about this time and time again, not only on this show, but in videos that I've done before talking about TNA. TNA was always a company that has gone through a lot of trial and tribulation. They have gone through a lot of trial and tribulation, especially after 2014. You know, they started to go downhill around 2009, 2010, but they really were down on the dumps right after 2014 when they lost Spike TV. Because then they were jumping from network to network. They were going through Destination America, Pop TV. It got so bad that they were on this channel called Pursuit, a network that nobody had. It got so bad that they had to go on Twitch because they couldn't find any other television outlet. It also got so bad to the point where Anthem themselves wanted to sell TNA to AEW. Now, keep in mind, AEW, I believe, hadn't even made an announcement that the company was forming. But if you guys do not recall, a couple months before the announcement was, officially made for AEW as a company, there were a bunch of trademarks saying AEW, All Elite Wrestling. Tony Khan and the Khan family were running this. We're planning on starting this wrestling promotion. It was fun times. And again, this was coming after the first All In, which was September of 2018. A lot of stuff was going on. But Impact Wrestling at the time was kind of down on the dumps. Again, this is a company that has gone through a lot of trial and tribulation. And before Anthem purchased the company, which I believe was in 2017, the former owner, Dixie Carter, had a lot of issues paying talent. They couldn't even afford to put on their biggest show of the year, Bound for Glory. It was a crap show. It was embarrassing and just absolutely horrible. Tough times for TNA. But at the same time, TNA has always been a company that has always strived itself on being the underdog and being a company that is prone to survival. That is just not prone. Take that word out. I don't even know why I added that word out, but being a company that has just strived on survival. They've always survived whenever any trial or tribulation that they've dealt with. They've always survived. And imagine if you were to tell somebody in 2015, 2016 that TNA would be a thing in 2025, 26. They probably would laugh in your face. Now, if you were to tell a TNA fan that same thing in 2006, they'd be like, of course, TNA's freaking awesome. And keep in mind, 2006 to 2008 were TNA's peak years. But of course, the dark ages from 2015, 2014 to, let's say, 2020 were kind of the dark ages for TNA. The dark ages. And look, I am by no means a TNA hater. I'm going to say a lot of things negatively about TNA in this podcast. And the number one thing that I want to tell everybody watching this show is that I do not hate TNA. This is what we call constructive criticism, okay? I am going to give constructive criticism on what I saw this past Thursday on AMC, because I watched this show through AMC Plus. And I have a lot of things to say about this show, because this show was a train wreck. Of course, going back a little bit on the history of TNA, of course, had the partnership with AEW, and it kind of didn't really turn out well. I mean, at the time, they were still Impact Wrestling, but Impact had the partnership with AEW, and a lot of people view that partnership looking back negatively because they said AEW didn't really do anything for TNA or Impact Wrestling. I beg to differ because, I mean, for God's sakes, AEW literally gave one of their top guys, Kenny Omega, as he sent him all the way to Impact Wrestling and made him the Impact World Champion. They gave Impact Kenny Omega. They brought in Christian Cage, who was an AEW contracted wrestler, over to Impact. And Christian became the Impact/TNA World Champion. So I don't want to hear anything about, they didn't do anything to benefit TNA, blah, blah, blah. People need to understand that Impact in 2020/2021 was a different company then, during those years, 2020, 2021, compared to now. And then everybody started talking about Impact. Oh my God, you should really watch Impact Wrestling. But how the hell am I going to watch Impact Wrestling if I don't have Access TV? How the hell am I going to watch it? Fast forward, 2023, Bound for Glory 2023. Of course, Will Ospreay had that awesome match with Mike Bailey. They announced that TNA was coming back. And again, it sparked a lot of conversation. I was excited. I'm a big TNA fan. I was a huge TNA fan. I'm a big TNA fan. It's great to see. Everybody watched Hard to Kill. Not the best show, considering the fact that it was basically an Impact Wrestling show with TNA letters. And if you really think about it, it's kind of a thing now. TNA just nowadays in 2025 just does not resemble anything about the old TNA. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. It can be a bad thing because from a presentation standpoint, it's completely different. There's no six-sided ring for obvious reasons, because the six-sided ring is, let's be honest with ourselves, it's dangerous for the talent, so it's understandable. And people need to understand as well that TNA, when they started out as a company in 2002, started off with a four-sided ring. And to go even further, it was actually a WCW-style four-sided ring. Another thing, Scott D'Amore gets fired. Everybody was like, oh my God, Scott D'Amore got fired. What the hell's going to happen to TNA? There was no stopping TNA. Then they had the partnership with WWE. And let's be honest with ourselves, the partnership with WWE has benefited TNA greatly. It has. And I'm not going to dispute that. Because if you dispute that, you're obviously in denial. You are obviously in denial. That partnership with WWE has benefited TNA more than any other partnership that TNA has had in their 20 plus year history. It has. It has. And then as TNA started to gain more and more and more momentum, of course, they sold 4,000 plus seats at Slammiversary 2 years ago. And everybody thought Joe Hendry was going to win the title. He didn't win the title. And then we waited until Bound for Glory. He didn't win the title. Joe Hendry essentially became a phenomenon across the internet. He became a phenomenon on social media. He has. He has become a phenomenon. And then, of course, he finally wins the title at Genesis, has a lackluster run. And the new guy that is chasing after the world title is Santana. Santana is the guy, man. Santana, of course, the story of Santana is fantastic. This is a guy that has, let's be honest with ourselves, this is the guy that has betted on himself. He is the definition of betting on yourself. He left AEW, which is a much larger promotion, to go to a promotion like TNA, which by default now, especially now, is the number 3 promotion in the United States, to make a name for himself, because he wanted more from his career. And he knew that there was a ceiling for him in AEW. And ceilings in AEW is something that I am going to be talking about on this show, especially when we get to talk about Powerhouse Hobbs, because there's been a lot of discourse about Powerhouse Hobbs as of late. And I'm going to tell you why on this very show as to why Powerhouse Hobbs made the right decision in leaving AEW. But we're not talking about Powerhouse Hobbs now. We're talking about Santana. Santana bets on himself, goes to TNA, and they are doing this long buildup, a very similar buildup that they did with Joe Hendry in going after the TNA World title. Last year, TNA sells roughly around 8,000 seats at the UBS Arena. Now, granted, the UBS Arena holds more than 10,000 seats, but for TNA standards, 8,000 seats is fantastic for them. But at the same time, they sold a thousand seats a couple of days before the show because they announced that AJ Styles was returning to the show, was returning to TNA. After how many years? What was it? 10 years? 11 years? So they announced that AJ Styles is coming back, and they sold a bunch of tickets. AJ Styles essentially helped TNA sell those last couple of tickets for Slammiversary to reach that record. God forbid they gave you the turnstile count. But in terms of TNA, it took them 20 plus years to sell 8,000 seats. It took TNA 20 plus years to sell 8,000 seats at the UBS Arena. You know how long it took AEW to sell 10,000 seats for their first show? It took them 4 minutes. Now it's because the product was in demand. Nowadays, they can't even sell, let's be honest, like maybe, to an estimate, maybe 4,000 seats to a normal Dynamite. And that's strictly only for weekly television. For their pay-per-views, they're able to sell a bunch of tickets. Revolution is actually doing really good at the Crypto.com arena. I still call that arena the Staples Center, but whatever. But in terms of TNA, they did not put the belt on Santana. They didn't put the belt on Santana in his home state of New York, which made absolutely no sense. They moved towards Bound for Glory. A couple months later, we were at Bound for Glory. And where was it? Lowell, Massachusetts, I believe that was the arena. A pretty good show. We had the Hardys versus the Dudleys, a last time ever match, which was fantastic. We got Leon Slater versus Javon Evans, which was by far, it could have been the match of the year, and the match was absolutely amazing until Deep State came into the picture and basically ruined the whole thing. That is a classic TNA finish right there. TNA is known to do false finishes like that. Not false finishes, but TNA is known to do crappy finishes like that. They are known. From their 20-plus year history, they're known to do crappy finishes in their matches. And then we had Santana finally win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. And then they are not on television for a couple weeks, almost a whole month. And then their first night back, they have Santana lose the TNA World Heavyweight Championship to Kazarian via a roll-up. A roll-up. Think about that. A roll-up. A roll-up. And then they wanted Santana to chase back into the world title scene. That is basically TNA in a nutshell. And he wins this title on this debut on AMC. Now, what are my thoughts on TNA's debut on AMC? What are my thoughts on TNA's debut on AMC? The show sucked. The show absolutely sucked. There was nothing that this show did to make me want to purchase Genesis, which I ended up not watching. I know that's going to get a couple of people upset, but it's the truth. It did not get me to watch Genesis. The Leon Slater match did not happen on the show because of visa issues, and he ended up showing up on SmackDown, which ended up taking place in London, because I believe that is his, of course, the UK. He's from the UK. So Leon Slater was not on this show. Visa issues, it's a common thing, but visa issues were not the reason as to why this show was a letdown. The reason why this show on AMC was a letdown was because of the fact that, number one, the show was formatted poorly. Number two, the production of this show was just god-awful. I mean, it's crazy to think. I mean, think about this. The production of TNA in 2009 TNA, their production was 10 times better than TNA's production in 2026. Imagine, I mean, you would think that their production would advance. But if you watch this TNA show compared to a TNA show in 2009, I mean, you could easily see which show had the better production. You can literally put TNA's worst show of all time. Let's, off the top of my head, TNA Victory Road 2009. -5 stars. That show had better production than this show. This show, Victory Road 2009, had better production values than TNA's debut on AMC in 2026. From a production standpoint, this show was a freaking disaster. Disaster. You would think they would make a great first impression, but they didn't. It was basically your average Impact. That's what it was. It was your average Impact episode. That's what it was. It was your average TNA Impact episode. Nothing special, no surprises. You had a bunch of people speculating that Chris Jericho could possibly show up. You know damn well, TNA does not have the money that Chris Jericho wants. You know damn well TNA does not have the money to pay Chris Jericho, because they don't. Oh, but they're getting paid $10 million per year. Yeah, $10 million is pennies compared to the money that WWE and AEW are getting from their television contracts. $10 million is great, and it's huge for TNA. But it's nothing if you compare it to WWE or AEW. If you compare it to the big two, I mean, it's like apples and oranges. WWE is getting the most money out of all three promotions. AEW is, of course, it's a distant number two, but it's a number two that has money backed behind it. TNA is a distant number three. And we will talk about that as we continue. But the production values of this show was just absolutely horrendous. Everything about this was garbage. You had a moment on this show where they wanted to show you the Hollywood section, which is basically people, D-list, B-list, C-list celebrities that I have never heard of, and I mean this with the utmost respect. I've never heard of these people, touting their new AMC show. TNA did more to promote the network that they're on, because obviously they want to make the network happy, so I totally understand that, but they did more to promote AMC related programming than they did their own pay-per-view. The whole purpose of weekly wrestling television is essentially an infomercial to get you, the consumer, to purchase the pay-per-view. TNA did nothing to make me want to buy Genesis. AEW kind of has the same problem, but I know what I'm going to get when it comes to an AEW pay-per-view 9 times out of 10. They may fumble a couple times there and there, but 9 times out of 10, they are masters at pay-per-view. TNA, on the other hand, knows how to crap the bed. TNA did nothing to promote Genesis. They ran down the card, but that was really about it. And think about this. They announced the main event for Genesis within the last couple of minutes after the main event ended, before they went off the air. I mean, your main event is essentially the big match that you want to promote so you can get people to buy the pay-per-view, but you basically announced a rematch, Frankie Kazarian versus Mike Santana, in a Texas death match with Nick Nemeth as the special guest referee. And I mean this with the utmost respect to Santana, because I think Santana is fantastic and one of the highlights, in my opinion, of TNA. But is that really what you're going to give Mike Santana? I mean, think about this. I think it would have been better if TNA had promoted Mike Santana as the champion. Like, you had him win at Bound for Glory, and then you had him drop the title. You had him drop the title to Frankie Kazarian. And I mean this with the utmost respect, and I love Frankie Kazarian. I'm a big fan of Frankie Kazarian. But Frankie Kazarian was never a draw. Never a draw. Never drew a dime. And, you know, you have Santana drop the title to Frankie Kazarian, only to have him drop the title on the first show back on a new network. I mean, it would have been much smarter if you had heavily promoted Mike Santana leading up to this show as the world champion and telling all the casual fans, hey, this is the guy that is going to take us to the future. This is the guy that we are going to build our promotion around, Mike Santana. And these people did not do it. Instead, they had Mike Santana win the title, drop the title after having a whole month hiatus off with no television, coming back, have Santana drop the title on the first Impact after Bound for Glory, only to wait a couple months until the AMC debut to have him to win the world title. I mean, talk about stupid creative, but that's just how it was. We had Elijah, a.k.a. Elias, and the Hardys defeating Mustafa Ali, Jason Hodge, and John Schuyler, which was a pretty good opening match. Oh, first off, by the way, AJ Styles was on this show. I forgot to mention. Look, I will say, if there's any positives that I can say about this show, was the main event was pretty good. The opening match was pretty good, and the opening video package was really good. Aside from all of that, the show was crap. But the show opened with a video package, basically a whole Raw speech talking about TNA. TNA's whole history is basically built on video packages of Raw speeches. I mean, that's basically the entire history of TNA for you. But in this case, it makes total sense because, again, this is a company that has gone through a lot of trial and tribulation. AJ Styles comes out. He comes out and basically did nothing, kind of similar to his appearance at Slammiversary. He just kind of welcomed us to TNA Impact on AMC, and really, that was it. Do I think AJ Styles will make more appearances in TNA in the future in 2026? I genuinely believe yes. I think he will. And I even gave this hot take. I actually believe that he will win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship in 2026 as well. I may be totally wrong, but if that is the case, I'm here for it. Because again, this is AJ Styles' last year as a professional wrestler. Yes, he's going to be retiring in 2026. We do not know the exact date, but he is going to be retiring in 2026. We haven't had one match with AJ Styles in TNA, and he's already made 2 appearances in TNA. So I genuinely believe he's going to have a match in TNA. We just do not know when. And, you know, AJ did have a segment with Frankie Kazarian backstage, but Frankie Kazarian did drop the TNA title to Santana. But AJ Styles, aside from that, really didn't do anything. He didn't really do anything whatsoever. He just didn't. He did not do anything. Heather and basically Ash by Elegance defeated Jessie McKay and Cassie Lee. Honestly, this was a nothing match. Basically, Jessie McKay and Cassie Lee, I believe they're the former Iconics. They're on their way out of TNA. And keep in mind, before their AMC debut, TNA has had a lot of people leaving. They had Jake Something leave. The Rascals left. I mean, the Rascals got signed to AEW. There's been a little bit of a fiasco with Trey Miguel because Trey Miguel is also a part of the Rascals, but he got signed to AEW, but then immediately got released by AEW. And on Instagram, he stated that he's going to be taking time off of wrestling. So we will be talking about that later on. But essentially, the Rascals are signed to AEW. So AEW is basically signing a lot of ex-TNA guys. I mean, they've already signed Josh Alexander, and he was one of the top guys of TNA. So, I mean, that tells you a lot. But, again, Jessie McKay and Cassie Lee, they left TNA, and Ash by Elegance are the new Knockouts Tag Team Champions. But the crazy thing about this match was the fact that if you were watching this show on AMC Plus or AMC, because I know some people were watching it on TNA Plus, some people were watching it on AMC. I watched it on AMC Plus. You missed the whole match. Why? Because there was a part roughly in the beginning of the match where TNA went to commercial break. Then they came back from commercial break only to go like maybe 10 seconds later back to commercial break. So you basically missed the whole match. Again, the production of the show was god awful. Another thing I forgot to mention was when they were showing the Hollywood Row, of the celebrities, which again, people that I have absolutely no idea who these people are. TNA had the goal to show a bunch of empty seats in the arena. They didn't even tarp it off. They just showed flat out all of the empty seats on the hard cam side. I swear to God, they even showed all of the streamers that were there, which God bless those streamers. But let's be honest with ourselves. They're not going to get me to watch TNA. They're not going to get me to watch TNA. I'm not here to watch TNA for the streamers. I'm here to watch TNA for the talent. Guys like Mike Santana. That's why I am watching TNA. Guys like Mike Santana. Those guys draw no interest from me, with all due respect. Okay, I'm better than those guys. No shade. You guys are great. But they showed all those streamers, but TNA had the goal to show their half-empty building. They literally showed a bunch of empty seats all over the place. And I'm like, AEW has their problems, and I tweeted this out. AEW has their problems, but they are leagues, and yes, I said it, leagues above TNA in terms of production. And I crap on AEW's production. I do. I crap on AEW's production value. And their production, if you really think about it, is great. But if you compare it to WWE's production is essentially UFC production. Because now they're under the same route. They're under the same group. You get my drift. But WWE production has always and forever will be the best professional wrestling promotion that masters the art of production. They are masters at it. They know. They are masters at the art of production. TNA is garbage, man. Like, AEW struggles to sell seats for their weekly television for Dynamite and for Collision. But at least AEW is able to, from a production standpoint, make the show look like it's sold out. TNA does not even try. TNA does not even try. TNA does not even try. And then the main event. Oh, actually, no, not even in the main event. We had a segment with Santino Marella, who is the authority figure for TNA, bringing out, a new authority figure. And this new authority figure is the former Sonya Deville. Yes, the former Sonya Deville. And I believe her name is Daria Ray. I believe. Yes. Daria Ray. Now, I'm going to say this right here and right now. I love Sonya Deville. I think she's great. And she was great in her role as the authority figure because she was the authority figure for WWE. She kind of she was with Adam Pearce as like the co-authority figures. And I think Adam Pearce is a great authority figure. And he has been an authority figure since, 2020, 2021? He's been great. He's been fantastic in his role. And we need to understand is that one thing that people need to understand is that TNA right now is living in the past in terms of authority figures. Because yes, WWE has authority figures on their television show, but they don't have authority figures that basically take over the bulk of the entire show. That's what they used to do back in the day. Ever since Vince McMahon was the heel authority figure during the Attitude Era, WWE has tried time and time and time again to replicate that heel authority figure, quote unquote, magic. They did it with Eric Bischoff. They did it with The Authority. They did it with Vicky Guerrero. They did it with so many people. They did it with John Laurinaitis. And it just they never matched the magic of the Vince McMahon heel authority figure back in the late 90s and early 2000s, especially, that first year in 98. They never really recaptured that magic. And WWE has constantly tried time and time again to recapture that magic. And they never did. So they just gave up and they basically gave Adam Pearce that not heel authority figure, but just the generic authority figure that just appears and just makes the matches. And that's it. That makes him very similar to what William Regal was. Very similar to what William Regal was in TNA. William Regal was just an authority figure that just made the matches. And that was it. He wasn't a part of the show 24/7, 365. Like, he was just there, made the matches, did his job, and he's out of there. In this case, TNA is living in the past, and they have a heel authority figure in Daria Ray. Now, Daria Ray comes out, and nobody knew who she was until she walked out. When they when they showed the name Daria Ray on the Tron, I swear to God, nope, there were crickets. I heard crickets. Nobody knew who she was until she came out. And even then, when she came out, people recognized her, but she didn't get a big reaction. TNA literally thought that she was going to get a big reaction. And I mean, no disrespect to Sonya Deville. Again, she's phenomenal. She's phenomenal in her role. And I'm definitely curious to see what she's going to do in the future. But I'm just judging this by the reaction that she got from the audience. Nobody knew who she was. And she turns heel and just berates Santino Marella. And after that, she brings out a new addition to the TNA Knockouts division. And it's, wait for it, Elena Black. Who the hell is Elena Black? Who the hell is Elena Black? Who the hell is Elena Black? Who the hell is she? It's Cora Jade. Crickets. You heard crickets. Nobody knew who the hell she was until she came out. And even when she came out, you heard crickets. You heard nobody. Cora Jade. Yes, Cora Jade. That Cora Jade. Yeah. Moving on. We had the main event. We had Mike Santana versus Frankie Kazarian for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. Very good match. Not a bad match whatsoever. I actually relatively enjoyed the match. From the moment the bell rang, the crowd was invested. It was a good television style main event. And they had Mike Santana, which was the right decision, Mike Santana win the TNA World title. If TNA had Mike Santana lose, me and a lot of other people would have been pissed. But they were actually smart and actually made a right decision for a change and had Mike Santana win the World Championship. Okay. Overall, how was TNA Impact as a show? The show as a whole was awful. The format was just bad. There was no real direction. There was no real motive to make you want to buy Genesis, which happened last night or 2 nights ago from you guys watching this video. And it really gave you no motive to tune in to next week. AEW, people complain, and me included, complain about AEW not knowing how to follow up on things. But on the other hand, I've always said this, AEW always knows how to make a good first impression. They always knew how to do that. And the best example that I can give you was the first episode of Dynamite. That first episode of Dynamite, October 1st or October 2nd, 2019, one of those days, October of 2019, I was hyped. The first match that we saw on that TNT show of AEW was Cody Rhodes versus Sammy Guevara, a phenomenal opening match. That match basically showed you what AEW was all about. AEW is about where the best wrestle. Now, they didn't use that slogan, but that was essentially what AEW told you what it was. TNA has always been a company that has always been WWE light. This show basically not only felt WWE light, this show felt like it was NXT light. This show felt like it was NXT light. And not only that, again, TNA just didn't really make a good first impression. If you compare this first show on AMC compared to AEW's first show on TNT, it's like night and day. It's like night and day because the show ended, the AEW show back in 2019 ended with Chris Jericho forming his new faction, the Inner Circle. And it made you want to tune in next week like, oh my God, what is Chris Jericho up to? Oh my God, I'm excited. Ironically, yes, Chris Jericho made you excited back then in 2019 because he was just on another level. Nowadays, when Chris Jericho in AEW, he was kind of a channel changer nowadays. In the past couple of years, he was kind of a channel changer. Since like 2023, 2024, he's been, whenever you see Chris Jericho, you change the channel. But still, TNA did nothing to excite you for next week. Now, will I be watching TNA next week? Yes, because I'm very curious to see what TNA does. But in terms of the casual audience, and if there really is a casual audience for TNA because their audience is so niche, like AEW's audience is niche, but AEW's audience is niche, but if you compare AEW's niche audience to TNA's niche audience, TNA has a far smaller niche audience than AEW. At least AEW has a larger audience that has like 500,000 people watching on TBS and a couple thousand, not a lot, a couple thousand watching on HBO Max. But at least, AEW has a audience. What audience does TNA really have? TNA really failed to really capture the attention of a lot of fans when they were watching this first show. This show was berated by a lot of people. And rightfully so, including people that were on the TNA bandwagon. Guys like Eric Bischoff, guys like Raj Giri. Eric Bischoff, who went on the Ariel Helwani show and specifically said that with the right leadership and the right approach, TNA is able to surpass AEW as the number 2 promotion in the United States. Eric Bischoff himself thought that this show was the drizzling shits. Yeah, I said it. He thought that this show itself was the drizzling shits. He did not like this show whatsoever. And I like Eric Bischoff, but that take was god awful. When he said that TNA could surpass AEW as the number 2 promotion, a lot of people said that. I don't know if they were grifting or they actually believed what they were saying. But some people actually said that and believed that was possibly going to happen. Meanwhile, they don't give you any facts. AEW has a much higher budget. They're able to sign free agents. And if you honestly believe that TNA is going to sign Chris Jericho, you must be out of your freaking mind. We don't even know where Chris Jericho is going. For all we know, he may return to AEW because he is still on the AEW roster page. That could all change once we head towards the Royal Rumble. I digress. But still, people actually thought that TNA was going to surpass AEW as the number 2 promotion in the United States. Why? Why do you think that? Because WWE is partnered with TNA? Is that the reason why? Is that the reason why? Because I guarantee you, that is the reason that they're going to give you. That is the reason that those types of people that believe that type of ideology will tell you. Oh, because WWE will help TNA. And look, they have helped TNA. Let's be honest with ourselves. I think they kind of helped TNA I think they helped TNA get this deal with AMC as well. I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe they helped TNA get this television deal with AMC. Great. Another place for guys to work. TNA, and the only benefit that TNA has is that it is another promotion that is on national television, that is a place for guys to go and find work. We now have 3 promotions that are on national television in the United States. We have WWE, that is on Netflix, the CW, and USA Network. We got AEW, which is on the Turner Networks, on TBS, TNT, and HBO Max. And now we got TNA on AMC, which is a relatively smaller network compared to TNT, TBS, USA Network. But it's still a relatively known network with the shows that they produce, like The Walking Dead, Breaking Bad. You get my drift. And now TNA is on that network. And also, people need to understand that TNA has been a promotion that has had advantage after advantage after advantage after advantage. You don't believe me? They had a television deal with Spike TV, and they still crapped the bed. It got so bad to the point where they lied to their own network. They went head-to-head on Monday nights with all the stars. Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Rob Van Dam, Sting, everybody. All the legends you can think of. Hell, add the Nasty Boys on there, even though I could care less about the Nasty Boys. They went head-to-head against WWE, and they got destroyed. Why? Because of one word. One word. Incompetence. And TNA, making their debut on AMC, they were incompetent. TNA was incompetent. They were incompetent. They were. And they failed to grab the attention of all the fans that were wondering, hey, what was all the fuss about TNA? Why is everybody talking about TNA? They failed to grab that fan attention. They failed. They failed miserably. Now, again, this is only the first week. Things could change next week. Things could change the week after. Again, it's the first show. But still, with the first show, you need to make a good first impression. And TNA failed to make that good first impression. They did. Like they always do. They fail at everything. This company has always had a track record of not making a good first impression. That's essentially the history of TNA for you. LOL TNA is not just a catchphrase. LOL TNA is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle to this company. And it will forever be a lifestyle to this company. And I wouldn't be surprised if WWE ended up buying TNA in a couple years. Because you know these WWE partnerships, for all we can gloat about WWE, or for all we can gloat about TNA and, you know, the successes that they've been having recently and the partnership has been benefiting TNA, let's be honest, these partnerships are always one-sided with you when you're with WWE. Because it's always going to end up, you know, it's always going to end up in one promotion buying out the other. And that's going to be, unfortunately, WWE purchasing TNA in a couple years. Mark my words. Mark my words. I said this January 19th, 2026. WWE in a couple years will buy TNA Wrestling in a couple years. They will. People might laugh at me now, but then they'll come back to this very video. And then you'll be like, damn, Ricky, you've been telling the truth this whole time. What do you think? I'm not stupid. But that's the history of TNA for you. This show on AMC was a freaking disaster. Disaster on all levels. Not a good first impression. Genesis took place last or 2 nights ago. And I didn't watch the show, but I'll give you guys the results. Basically, Tessa Blanchard and Mila Moore defeated Vicious Vicky, Venuto, and Indy Hartwell. AJ Francis defeated Rich Swann. Mustafa Ali defeated Elijah. JDC took on Eddie Edwards, and this was JDC's last match. Of course, JDC, the former Fandango. Ryan Namath defeated Mara Sade. The Knockouts title was on the line as Lei Ying Lee defeated Zarya from NXT. The Hardys defeated the Righteous to retain the TNA tag titles. Leon Slater, who was supposed to be on this show, basically sent a message via video because, of course, he was dealing with visa issues and he was overseas. He actually made an appearance on SmackDown, and he actually apologized missing the event, and he promised to give Cedric Alexander and Moose a shot at his TNA X Division title shot. Joe Hendry defeated Cedric Alexander and Moose in a nothing triple threat match, and Mike Santana defeated Frankie Kazarian in the Texas Death Match and retained the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. Okay, that was Genesis. I did not watch the show. If you get mad at me, I don't care. Again, this show really just didn't pique my interest at all. I didn't even know the card until the AMC debut, so it's not really my fault. But again, I didn't really care about what was going on at Genesis. But that was Genesis for you guys. Chris Jericho. Let's talk about Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho. Of course, everybody was talking about Chris Jericho. Where is he going to end up? Where is he going to go? Well, we do not know. And from what it looks like, it may be WWE, but it may not be WWE. So we got the latest update, and this was reported on January 12th. It appears that there will be no breaking the walls down this afternoon on Monday Night Raw. Now, granted, this was on the Raw this past Monday. Literally, everybody thought Chris Jericho was going to be returning to Raw this Monday. Everybody thought last Monday, everybody thought Chris Jericho was going to come back. He did not come back. I don't think he's going to return on a random Raw. Everybody thought he was going to come back in Brooklyn. Of course, the first Raw of 2026, everybody thought that this Raw was going to be the greatest Raw ever with Braun Breaker versus CM Punk, and they were kind of disappointed with CM Punk versus Braun Breaker, with CM Punk retaining the World Heavyweight title, but CM Punk retaining the World Heavyweight title. Everybody thought Braun Breaker was going to go over, but he didn't. Everybody actually thought Chris Jericho was going to show up on the show, which would have been a great moment. But one thing that people realized was that Chris Jericho was still on the AEW roster page. He was still on the AEW roster page, and right now it's January 19th, 2026, and Chris Jericho is still on the AEW roster page. Now, if I actually, right here, I'm transitioning to the AEW roster page. If you guys see, Chris Jericho is right here. He is still on the active AEW roster page. Could that mean something? I have absolutely no idea. But Chris Jericho is still on the active AEW roster page. The latest word on Chris Jericho's immediate future came from PW Insider earlier Monday morning, that Mike Johnson is reporting that there are no plans for WWE to feature the 9-time world champion at the show after the 9-time world champion in Germany. Rumors are about a WWE return for Jericho have been swirling for weeks, with many fans anticipating that his comeback would take place on the first Raw of 2026 in Brooklyn, New York. That obviously did not end up happening. And as of the writing, the former AEW Men's World Champion, the very first AEW World Champion, is listed as an active member on the AEW website, as you guys all saw here. Jericho's AEW contract was expected to expire at the end of 2025, but in his latest report, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select was unable to confirm whether any additional time was added to the deal due to his ongoing hiatus from television. Okay, the next date to watch for Chris Jericho to resurface, it's not going to be for AEW, could be this Thursday night, which was, of course, the Impact show, which he ended up not showing up because, again, does TNA have the funds to pay Chris Jericho with all the money that Tony Khan was paying Chris Jericho? I hardly doubt it. What are my thoughts on this? At this point, we all do not know what Chris Jericho's status is. I know he's going to be very active next month, and he's going to be touring with Fozzy next month. That's from what I know, he's going to be touring with Fozzy next month, and he's not going to be in the ring for the majority of February. from what I've heard. Don't quote me on this, but what are my thoughts on Jericho going? First off, right now, from what it looks like, Jericho is a free agent, but he's still an active member of the AEW roster page. And if you normally, when you are considered a free agent, you are removed from the roster page. You are removed from the roster page, but Jericho is not. Could we be seeing a scenario in which Tony Khan just offered Jericho a boatload of money? Because we all know Tony Khan, quote unquote, overpays for talent. But at the same time, you could also make the argument that wrestlers for years have been vastly underpaid compared to other athletes. So is it really wrong for Tony to really pay all this money to Chris Jericho? There's rumors that Tony may have made him an offer that Jericho couldn't refuse, and maybe Jericho signed it. We have no idea. Jericho's not going to TNA. We saw that this past Thursday. He's not going to TNA whatsoever. My only best option, there are only two possible scenarios that I see happening here. He either re-signs with AEW, and that's less likely in my opinion. And personally, I don't want that to happen. But if he ends up returning and staying with AEW, all power to Chris Jericho, because at the end of the day, Chris Jericho wants to do what Chris Jericho wants to do. Most likely, he's going to be making a return at the Royal Rumble. I genuinely believe that Jericho will be making a return in Saudi Arabia at the Royal Rumble in a couple weeks. That's my prediction. And I say that because, I mean, do you guys honestly believe that he was going to return on a random episode of Raw? Do you think he was going to return on the first Raw on Netflix in 2026? Do you guys think he was going to return to Raw last Monday in Germany? No. If he's going to make a return to WWE, it's going to be in a big way. And my prediction is I think he's going to be making that return at the Royal Rumble. It's literally the best possible option for Chris Jericho. If he is about to sign a contract, or he has signed a contract, we don't know, to WWE, most likely he's going to be making a return at the Royal Rumble. That's the best possible scenario in terms of a Chris Jericho return. That just is. It is the best possible scenario for a Chris Jericho return. Bar none. Bar none. The best possible scenario for Chris Jericho. It is. Or for all we know, he may have signed a new deal with AEW and is staying with AEW. And if he is staying with AEW, we're ditching the learning true crap and we're having Chris Jericho just be a solo act on TV. If he is staying with AEW, which I hardly doubt he is. But I may be totally wrong. Have him be a solo act on TV and maybe be a heel. But don't have him be a part of factions or anything. Just have him feud with top guys. That's it. Because Chris Jericho's in the later portion of his career, you know? But Chris Jericho is still phenomenal in the ring. But in my opinion, a WWE move is the better option for him. In my opinion, I think it's the better option for him because he has a fresh group of faces to feud with. He's able to rekindle his feud with Cody Rhodes. He's able to rekindle his feud with CM Punk. You know? He could feud with guys like, for all we know, Roman Reigns, which I hardly doubt he would if he returned to WWE, but that's just me. He could feud with a lot of guys. WWE is just a fresh slate for Chris Jericho. Not only that, the WWE could promote Chris Jericho's retirement tour because, you know, WWE loves their retirement tours. John Cena had his retirement tour last year. AJ Styles is retiring this year. Who's the next guy that's going to be retiring? Oh, yeah, I forgot. Brock Lesnar. Oh, we also got Chris Jericho who's retiring. WWE can market Chris Jericho off of that. We have no idea. That's just the thought that I had. But I feel like the best likely scenario for Chris Jericho is WWE. For all we know, he may have re-signed with AEW, but if he re-signs with AEW, look, I don't agree with it, but if that's the decision that Jericho wants to make, let him make that decision because at the end of the day, it's his career and we shouldn't judge Chris Jericho on the decisions that he wants to make for his own career. Okay? Cut the tribalism crap. Chris Jericho does Chris Jericho wants to do. That's my opinion on Chris Jericho on his free agent status. All right. Our next topic, we're going to be talking about Powerhouse Hobbs. Yes, the Monstar, Powerhouse Hobbs, the Book of Hobbs. Powerhouse Hobbs made a shocking move. He made a shocking move. And what's crazy about this is that we found this out this past Wednesday when we were watching Dynamite. Because, of course, there was a backstage segment involving Jet Speed, consisting of Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey with Hangman Page. And they made the challenge to the Ops. Yes, the Ops for the AEW Trios titles on Collision. And everybody was like, why are they immediately challenging the Ops for the Trios titles? Why is Hangman Page immediately pairing with the Ops? Little did we know, right after Dynamite went off the air, Powerhouse Hobbs was set to leave AEW and was set to become a free agent. Interesting. Now all of the lines were starting to align with one another. Because if there was a title match, a Trios title match, which of course Powerhouse Hobbs is 1/3 of the AEW Trios champions, we all know that Powerhouse Hobbs is going to drop those Trios titles. They're all going to drop those Trios titles. And lo and behold, Jet Speed and Hangman Page won the Trios titles on Collision. Well, I'm reading this from Bleacher Report's website. They basically summarized the whole thing. Powerhouse Hobbs stunned fans this week with the revelation that his All Elite Wrestling contract was set to expire on January 15th. And that made him, of course, a free agent. This came to a surprise to most viewers because, of course, he's currently 1/3 of the AEW Trios champions, no longer 1/3 of the Trios champions. In fact, he's been more visible recently due to his role in the Hangman Page feud with the Ops. However, Dave Meltzer reported that WWE had shown interest and expected him to join the company during a recent episode of Wrestling Observer Radio that would add some context to the situation, as one would have to assume AEW didn't expect him to leave because he was still on television regularly. Fightful Select also reported that Tony Khan made Hobbs a substantial offer, but he turned it down because he is likely heading to WWE. That would make him the latest wrestler to join Khan's biggest competitor, and it would be a safe bet to say he won't be the last. Obviously, it's going to happen constantly. Guys are going to go back and forth wherever they want to go because that's the nature of the business. This isn't to say that AEW hasn't made strides as an alternative to the industry leader. Nevertheless, these moves will continue to occur when there are two viable options in the United States, obviously. Okay. From what it looks like, Powerhouse Hobbs is WWE bound. What are my thoughts on this? Me personally, I'm happy for Powerhouse Hobbs. What we saw in this scenario, Tony Khan probably offered Powerhouse Hobbs millions of dollars because we all know Tony Khan loves offering these big money contracts to a lot of these wrestlers. Tony himself, I believe, thinks that he can see a lot of value in Powerhouse Hobbs. Powerhouse Hobbs, on the other hand, thinks that he has reached his ceiling in AEW. And I'm going to have to agree with Powerhouse Hobbs. Powerhouse Hobbs had a ceiling in AEW. He did. Let's be honest with ourselves. He has had a ceiling in AEW. He was going to be pushed no further than he was with the Ops. The Ops was Powerhouse Hobbs' ceiling. Could he have done a lot more? Yes, but AEW has had a good track record of not treating big men relatively well. Big men are not necessarily AEW's strong sides in terms of creative. It's really not. They never had a good track record of booking big men. They never did. The best scenario that I can give you, the best example that I can give you is Wardlow. Wardlow has had a horrible, and I mean a horrible track record in AEW. It's just been bad. You know, the height of Wardlow was his feud with MJF. And you would think Wardlow, being the big man that he is, he could have easily been marketable. But AEW had no idea what to do with him. No idea what to do with him. Yeah, he had his feud with MJF, but let's be honest, during that match with MJF at Double or Nothing 2022, who was everybody talking about? Who was everyone talking about? Because they were damn sure not talking about Wardlow. They were talking about MJF. They were talking about MJF because of what happened that same day. Because he threatened, apparently threatened to walk out. There was some fiasco going on there. He was not going to show up at Double or Nothing. It's another story for another time. But everybody was talking about MJF. Nobody was talking about Wardlow. He had multiple runs with the TNT title, failed miserably. Not his fault. Blame AEW on that because, again, they're the creative minds and they just do not know how to book big men. They paired him up with the Undisputed Elite. That went nowhere. They had him make his return at All Out last year as a part of what was it? All Out or Forbidden Door? I don't remember. And they made him a part of the Don Callis family, I believe, which then unfortunately led to Wardlow suffering an injury, and now he's currently on the injury list. Powerhouse Hobbs is the same thing. He kind of reached his ceiling. Yeah, he was a part of Team Taz. He was a part of the Ops. He did a lot of fun things. But again, this is a pure example of somebody wanting to take less money in exchange for a better opportunity somewhere else. And you cannot blame Powerhouse Hobbs for that. To a lot of wrestlers, money is not everything to them. Some wrestlers, money is everything. Some other wrestlers and most wrestlers, money is not always everything. Hobbs is one of those guys. And you cannot fault Hobbs for that. Because Hobbs wants to be a bigger star. Now, him going to WWE, which let's be honest, he's most likely going to WWE. He's not going to TNA. Is he going to the main roster? Is he going to NXT? I most likely see him going to NXT. But who knows? They may or may not put him immediately on the main roster. But let's be honest, Ricky Saints is doing big things in NXT, so most likely he's going to go to NXT. And you know what? That's a good spot for him. That is a good spot for him. Mariah May went straight to NXT, and the reason why she went to NXT instead of the main roster is because NXT lost Julia and Stephanie Vaquer. That's the only reason why. It's the only reason why. Hobbs left AEW because he wanted to pursue a better opportunity elsewhere. And WWE is where that opportunity is at. WWE is where that opportunity is at, and you cannot fault him for that. He made a smart business decision. That's what Hobbs did. He's betting on himself. And sometimes in this business, you have to bet on yourself. I don't want to hear any Powerhouse Hobbs hate because he left AEW. Look, guys are going to fit in AEW. Some guys aren't. Some guys fit better in WWE. Some guys fit better in AEW. It's just how the business works. That's the beauty of this business today. We got we got two. I don't think about three, but we got two viable options. Now, really three, but two viable options that is able to pay high money. And look, Hobbs, I don't think Hobbs is going to be making the same amount of money that he was in AEW, but you know what? If he gets a better opportunity in exchange, then you cannot really blame Powerhouse Hobbs for signing with WWE. So, what are my thoughts on this? Personally, I'm happy for Hobbs. I hope he's successful wherever he goes. This was definitely a shock to a lot of people, but hey, it is what it is, and that's how the industry is operating. Moving on, Trey Miguel. Trey Miguel was in the news. Of course, AEW signed the Rascals. Ironically, they signed the Rascals a couple days before their TNA's AMC debut. And I'm a big fan of the Rascals, of course. The Rascals, that being Wes Lee or Desmond Xavier, Zachary Wentz, Myron Reed, and of course, Trey Miguel. Trey Miguel is no longer with AEW after he recently signed with the company. And everybody was confused because they were in a segment on Collision, a backstage interview segment on Collision, and Trey Miguel was nowhere to be seen, and it left everybody confused. Like, why is Trey Miguel not a part of the Rascals? And Trey Miguel actually went on social media and he tweeted this out, and I quote, "Taking a break from wrestling, please respect my space and don't tag me in any posts or comments. Go support the Rascals still." That's what he posted on social media. In my opinion, what are my thoughts on this? Look, personally, I'm a big fan of Trey Miguel. I think Trey Miguel is great. But it's kind of a shocker to a lot of people. A lot of people, because again, everybody wanted to see the Rascals in AEW, but I mean, Trey Miguel is a big part of the Rascals, but still, I mean, the Rascals can still do Rascals things, but I mean, it's very weird how that turned out. I mean, they signed him and then he immediately leaves. That's I don't know. Something's up with that. Some people were saying that his ex-girlfriend worked in AEW and that played a big role. We have no idea about that. We're going to have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, if it's a personal situation that Trey Miguel is going through, look, at the end of the day, we wish Trey Miguel the best. And wherever he goes, look, we wish him all the best. But Trey Miguel is nowhere to be seen, and he's left AEW for the foreseeable future. All right. Let's talk about WrestleMania. WrestleMania 42. WrestleMania 42 is happening, and it's happening in Las Vegas, Nevada. Yes, it's happening in Las Vegas, Nevada. And of course, you guys know the story. They originally announced for New Orleans, but then they screwed over New Orleans because they got more money from Las Vegas. So then they decided to put WrestleMania once again in Las Vegas. And I'm not really excited about WrestleMania in Las Vegas this year, considering the fact that WrestleMania last year was kind of crap. But we got updated plans for the main event of WrestleMania 42. WrestleMania 42, okay, so the rumored main event that was in the reports throughout the past couple months was that they were going to run it back for a third time and they were going to do Cody versus Roman 3, and that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Me personally, I didn't really have a big problem with it. And the reason why I say that is because of the fact that, number one, both Roman and Cody matches were freaking phenomenal matches. Like, in and of itself, the matches were great. But I think the big reason as to why a lot of people did not like the idea of a possible Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns match was because of the fact that, number one, it was going to get repetitive, and number two, what was really the story going into that match? Because if you look at the WWE product now, and look, I really haven't been paying attention to the WWE product. I've only been watching like a couple of highlights because there's really nothing interesting going on WWE programming right now. The biggest issue right now with WWE as a product is there's no main story going on, especially like, you know, going into WrestleMania. If you look at the past couple of years, dating back from WrestleMania 39, WrestleMania 40, and WrestleMania 41, those WrestleManias had a narrative going into that WrestleMania in terms of the main eventing, especially with Cody Rhodes. WrestleMania 39, of course, Cody Rhodes came back the year prior, WrestleMania 38, and he wanted to win the title that his father, you know, never was able to win. And he went after Roman Reigns. I still thought Cody should have won that, but whatever. He lost, and a bunch of people were pissed, but they basically took the high road and built up Cody even more because he didn't face enough adversity, which makes sense. And Cody was more over when The Rock came in the build-up to WrestleMania 40, and you guys all know that fiasco. The Rock tried to change things last minute like he always does because he has to ruin everything, but then the fans rebelled and wanted to go towards Cody, and WWE were forced to change the WrestleMania event, the WrestleMania main event, to Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. And that led to the phenomenal overbooked, and yes, it was overbooked match. It was overbooked, but it was phenomenal and it was amazing match between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, which led to Cody Rhodes winning the undisputed WWE Championship. Then we lead to WrestleMania 41. The narrative going into WrestleMania 41, especially in the main event, was John Cena, considering 2025 was John Cena's last full year as a full-time professional wrestler. And, of course, he recently turned heel at the Elimination Chamber, and he wanted to win number 17. That was the story going on. And then arguably led to, now looking back, because I had a different opinion when I watched the match, but now looking back, considering the nature of John Cena's heel run, it was a flop. Arguably one of the worst WrestleMania main events of all time. There was really, there was some sort of narrative going into that WrestleMania with John Cena, but after, the John Cena heel run, they kind of just went wherever they wanted. And then, of course, Cody Rhodes won the title back at SummerSlam. He feuded with Drew McIntyre and dropped the title a couple of Fridays ago on SmackDown in the 3 Stages of Hell match. And by the way, Drew McIntyre winning the the WWE title was the right move to make, because Cody Rhodes' WWE title reign, his second title reign, in my opinion, was kind of a flop. But at the same time, a lot of people are kind of debating whether or not Cody Rhodes should turn heel now. Some people are saying he should turn heel going into WrestleMania. I actually don't think he will. I think eventually he will turn heel, but I don't think right now is the case, because he still sells a bunch of merchandise and he's still relatively over with the crowd at a time where, yes, he's starting to get those negative reactions, and he did get that negative reaction last year in Las Vegas, and he's most likely going to get that negative reaction now in Las Vegas this year at WrestleMania, but I think he's still over everywhere else. So it's going to take time. And keep in mind, Austin had a short run, from like 98 when he became 98 where he became the man. Basically, like, his run lasted like 2 or 3 years until he turned heel. John Cena, on the other hand, throughout the entirety of his babyface run, he never turned heel until last year. Cody, you could still wait on Cody in terms of a heel, but I genuinely believe that the seeds are starting to be planted in some way, shape, or form. But we got updated plans on the main event for WrestleMania 42. And some of those plans are very interesting. Now, WWE, according to the Wrestling Observer, has changed the course for its WrestleMania 42 main event. The plan had been for a third Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns match to headline the show. However, Dave Meltzer wrote in today's Wrestling Observer newsletter that Triple H soured the idea of running a third Rhodes versus Reigns match in 4 years. Dave Meltzer stated this, and I quote, "The way it was explained is that Paul Levesque took another look at the Rumble to Mania planned direction and decided that doing a Rhodes versus Reigns match for the third time in 4 years and spending months building the direction would lead to audience fatigue. The change in WrestleMania plans and the decision to have Drew McIntyre win the WWE Championship were made within 48 hours of the title change taking place. There are now 2 potential WrestleMania main events under consideration: Rhodes versus McIntyre, or a 3-way with Rhodes versus McIntyre versus Jacob Fatu." Meltzer continued, and I quote, "We were told that Reigns will be the odd man out of the WWE title picture. He is scheduled to return at the Rumble, and one would expect his direction to be clear there. The 2 ideas for WrestleMania at this point are a 3-way with Rhodes, Fatu, and McIntyre, or just McIntyre versus Rhodes." Meltzer also noted that both McIntyre and Rhodes pushed for McIntyre to win the WWE Championship, with the idea that Rhodes is going into WrestleMania changing the title rather than defending it would be a fresher story. New WWE Champion Drew McIntyre is set to appear on the SmackDown in London, which already happened, and had a fantastic segment with Randy Orton, and then, of course, Jacob Fatu. But by the way, Drew McIntyre is great at what he does. I'm so happy that he is the WWE champion right now, because think about this. Every time WWE booked Drew McIntyre in some sort of title match, they always had Drew McIntyre lose. Always, always, always had him lose. Of course, during the CM Punk feud, they always had CM Punk cost Drew McIntyre the title, which totally made sense because, of course, he was still in an ongoing feud with CM Punk, and that made for great TV. I feel like the CM Punk and Drew McIntyre feud definitely, Drew McIntyre is already a main guy, but they made, that feud itself made Drew McIntyre more likable than he already was. He was already likable, but that feud made Drew McIntyre more likable than ever. And now look at Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre right now is a heel, but you see all the reactions that Drew McIntyre is garnering with the crowd. I mean, he's getting relatively positive reactions with the crowd. A lot of people are loving Drew McIntyre and the work that he's doing right now. 100%, I'm a fan of his. He is absolutely fantastic, and he always has been. Always has been. His promo ability, everything about Drew McIntyre is just fresh. And he's been in the main roster for years now, since 2018? You know, because he made his return to NXT in 2017, but then he moved to the main roster in 2018. But Drew McIntyre is doing a lot of great things now. He is. He's doing right now, Drew McIntyre is the made man. He is the made man. And him being a top heel, honestly, is fantastic. But in terms of the WrestleMania main event, I'm very curious about it because the two matches that Meltzer pointed out, either the one-on-one match between Cody and McIntyre, sounds great, but Cody and Drew have been feuding for a while now. And I don't know if fans want to see that again. But the chase with Cody Rhodes going after the world title, in a way, is kind of refreshing, but at the same time, what if he wins the Royal Rumble for a third time? Not for a third time in a row, but for a third time. I don't know. I feel like there's probably going to be some sort of backlash when it comes to Cody Rhodes. The three-way in terms of Jacob Fatu, Cody, and Drew sounds intriguing, but at the same time, it just does not sound like a WrestleMania main event. Now, granted, there are many times where there was a three-way match as the main event of WrestleMania. I mean, a lot of people, of course, are going to sorry about that. A lot of people, of course, are going to be pointing towards the three-way at WrestleMania 20 with Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Chris Benoit. I mean, a phenomenal main event, arguably one of the greatest WrestleMania main events of all time, but it will never be mentioned again for obvious reasons, and rightfully so. I don't have to name them. You know the incident that happened. Also, there was, of course, Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton versus Batista. I mean, look, there have been times where three-ways, were the main event of WrestleMania. In this case, honestly, I'm not sure. Because again, at the start of talking about this topic, there's really no big giant narrative or big storyline going into this WrestleMania. Really, for the first time in a while, I'm like, really, what is going to happen at WrestleMania? I genuinely don't know what's going to be happening at WrestleMania. The Royal Rumble is definitely going to be very interesting because clearly the Royal Rumble is going to be stacked just as much as last year. Last year's Royal Rumble was stacked, but this year's going to be very interesting. What is Cody Rhodes' role going to be in that Royal Rumble? What is Roman Reigns' role going to be in that Royal Rumble? Because I genuinely believe Roman Reigns will be a part of that Royal Rumble match. If he wins that Royal Rumble, are they going to go forward with Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns? I genuinely believe they might. But at the same time, will the audience accept it? Honestly, I have no idea. Because again, I just do not know what's going to happen for WrestleMania. We're probably going to get a lot of answers at the Royal Rumble. If Cody Rhodes wins, then he's going to face Drew McIntyre. But keep in mind, we also got the Elimination Chamber. What's going to happen at the Elimination Chamber? Because the Elimination Chamber has stakes for WrestleMania as well. It depends on what title is it for. Because if, for example, Cody Rhodes wins the Royal Rumble, he's going to go after the WWE title. He's not going to go after the World Heavyweight title. It just makes no sense. And that leaves open the shot for the World Heavyweight title, which is CM Punk's title, at the Elimination Chamber. So, again, it's very interesting. But now that Drew McIntyre is in the mix, it makes it a little bit more exciting. Because with now Drew McIntyre being in the mix, obviously WWE is changing their plans for WrestleMania. And at the end of the day, that's something positive. Because if they just went with Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, I'd be fine with it. I personally would be fine with it. But I don't know if the majority of the audience would be fine with it because they don't like repetitiveness. But at the same time, Cody and Roman are not capable of having a bad. They never had bad matches. Both their matches were classic matches in my opinion. Phenomenal matches. Great. I mean, people will talk about those matches forever. But still, Are fans ready for a third match between those guys? Do fans want that third match? I don't know. Most likely, I honestly don't think so. We're going to have to wait and see, but we're going to get a lot of answers at the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble is definitely something to keep an eye out for. Saturday night's main event. Saturday night's main event is actually happening, yes. Saturday, January 24th, that being next Saturday, and we got the card for Saturday night's main event. We got Cody Rhodes taking on Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu was a big factor as to why Cody Rhodes lost the WWE Championship. Not intentionally, but we all know what happened. We got Cody Rhodes versus Jacob Fatu. Jade Cargill will take on Jordynne Grace for the women's title. And this has been Jade Cargill's first title defense in more than 2 months. Imagine that. Rhea Ripley and Io Sky will take on Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez for the WWE Women's Tag Titles. And there's going to be a 4-way number one contenders match to determine the number one contender for the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble, being Randy Orton, Trick Williams, Sami Zayn, and Damian Priest. Some people are saying Randy Orton, considering he was a part of the segment with Drew McIntyre, but some people are also stating that Sami Zayn might be the challenger for Drew McIntyre. And honestly, a Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre match sounds more intriguing for the Royal Rumble. Even though Sami Zayn is not going to win, it sounds more intriguing for the WWE title at the Royal Rumble. We're going to have to wait and see, but that is Saturday night's main event for you. Also, in our last topic on this edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast, before we get out of here, we're going to be talking about Ring of Honor. Why are we talking about Ring of Honor? Well, Ring of Honor actually recently announced a show on March 27th. It's a 2-day special event. It's called Global Wars Canada. And basically, Global Wars Canada, it's going to be a joint show with Maple Leaf Pro. Now, what is Maple Leaf Pro? Maple Leaf Pro is Scott D'Amore's promotion. He runs these shows, whenever he wants. He doesn't do weekly. He does once every couple of months. But on Friday, March 27th, they're going to have Global Wars. And MLP, that being Maple Leaf Pro, is going to have this show called Uprising. Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor today announced a massive 2-day mega event weekend in Windsor, Ontario, Canada at St. Clair College, bringing together elite talent from All Elite Wrestling, New Japan, Pro Wrestling Noah, DDT, and CMLA, and additional international partners across back-to-back nights. Global Wars will take place on Friday, March 27th, and it will showcase world-class competitors from Maple Leaf Pro and Ring of Honor alongside international stars across the global wrestling landscape. The event will be headlined by current AEW National Champion Ricochet, marking his first Global Wars main event appearance in Canada. The mega event weekend continues Saturday, March 28th with MLP Uprising, headlining by the international powerhouse duo The Good Brothers. Yes, The Good Brothers, Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows, fresh off of their shocking return to Japan via Pro Wrestling Noah, challenging all comers in a marquee main event. And then they name additional talent from DDT, CM Pro Wrestling Noah. Why do I mention this, I might add? You're probably thinking, why are you mentioning this announcement? Because I wanted to spark a conversation as to why. I wanted to really bring up a conversation about this. And I don't know why the Halloween-esque screen bug is over here, but it is what it is. But I wanted to bring up a discussion about, Scott D'Amore. Scott D'Amore, of course, runs Maple Leaf Pro. And they're doing a joint show with Ring of Honor. Now, you guys know my thoughts on Ring of Honor. I think Ring of Honor, to me, is, I don't want to say a dead brand, but a brand that just lacks identity. I've always said this before, and I'll say it again. Ring of Honor used to be giving you guys the best wrestlers in the world and the best possible matches you have ever seen in your life. That was what Ring of Honor was marketed to people like me back in the day, especially with early Ring of Honor in the 2000s. AEW basically is that. That's what AEW is. What is Ring of Honor? Ring of Honor is another AEW show.
It is. It's just another AEW show. Now, I may be speaking out of the top of my head and I may be totally wrong about this, and most likely I am, but I wanted to spark this conversation. Scott D'Amore. Everybody has been pointing at Scott D'Amore to be the new creative figurehead at AEW because AEW has some creative issues. Even though I do think they're doing much better now than they were in 2024, I feel like they have built a lot of good faith within the wrestling audience, and that's great. They still have struggles in terms of their creative, and it's very noticeable. Tony Khan is somebody who just doesn't delegate. He does not delegate whatsoever. He just doesn't. He is writing Dynamite. He's writing Collision. He's writing the pay-per-views. He's booking the pay-per-views, and he's also booking Ring of Honor. Could this be a stepping stone for Scott D'Amore to possibly run AEW or Ring of Honor? Now, I know that's far-fetched. He has his own promotion, but it's a promotion that does shows, on occasional basis, like from an occasional, like any occasional time they will do a show. They don't do a show weekly or monthly. Once every couple of months, they will do a show. But it's very interesting that they announced this partnership. What are my thoughts? Who knows? I don't think if Scott D'Amore ever came to AEW, I don't think he's going to run AEW. I think Tony Khan will always run AEW. But if he ever came to AEW, I think his job will be running Ring of Honor. Because my thing about Ring of Honor is Ring of Honor should be a feeder system to AEW. It should be a developmental territory for AEW. There should be no crossover with AEW whatsoever. Ring of Honor should be used to building new talent before they go up to that main roster, that being AEW. Ring of Honor should be what NXT Black and Gold was, because Black and Gold NXT was basically a super indie on a WWE budget. If you really think about it, that's kind of what AEW is now. Just AEW has it looks more mainstream now than NXT. NXT was a little bit more independent. But Ring of Honor, was always built as the largest independent wrestling promotion ever. So why not do the same thing with Ring of Honor? Make Ring of Honor a super indie. And the best person to spearhead that is Scott D'Amore. It's an interesting topic. I don't know. I may be pulling out of my ass over here and just making assumptions that I know are not true, but it's just something that I really wanted to think about. I really wanted to think about, because could this be a possibility? I have no idea. We're going to have to wait and see. But if I'm Tony Khan, I'd call up Scott D'Amore and ask him to run Ring of Honor. I'd do that. Because I think Scott D'Amore is the right guy for the job. That's just my opinion, though, but you guys may think differently. But yeah, that was the WrestleHavoc podcast from Monday, January 19th, 2026. 26. I always tend to mistake to mistake myself and say 2025 instead of 2026. But it is what it is. We had a great first show. We talked about TNA. We talked about Chris Jericho. We talked about Hobbs. We talked about the Rascals. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about a lot of things on this show. But, man, what's going to happen next week? We're going to be talking about a lot of things next week. But be on the lookout for next week's episode. But as always, this has been the WrestleHavoc podcast. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, and we can look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys all next week. Peace.